I thought I would, and I don't know how this came up in conversation with someone, I can't remember. But anyway, oh, and Cecile's not on here. I was doing this a little bit for her too. But anyway, it's there is a prayer with every step, and on some of the steps you have to. The first two you have to really look for them, but there is a prayer, and a prayer is an asking. It is seeking God's will, and we do that in different ways. But anyway, I'm going to go through here, and we may get through all of them. I've got some pretty much big book scholars on here, and y'all can help me. And if you have some feedback, well, please give it to me. Have y'all ever heard of the prayers in the 12 steps? I know Jeff has. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with step one. And I enjoyed going through this because I'll never get through going through the steps and reading the steps. I mean, you talk about a design for living. If we want to know how to live life on life's terms, it's all laid out in the 12 steps. And the thing about it, it can be used, it was originally written, y'all all know, it was originally written for alcoholics back in the 1930s. And I always thought that they loaned the program to other entities. There's I don't know how many, but there's many groups. You have a problem, there's a 12-step program for it. You go to the big cities, New York, Seattle, all around. There's mental health 12-step programs. There's, anyway, any problem that you might have, the steps can apply to any problem, but they were originally designed for Alcoholics Anonymous, and I do believe these were God-inspired to Bill W. He was the major author. He gives credit where credit's due to other people that helped, but mainly he was the one that penned and authored the 12 steps. And I won't go into all that history, but there was 8 steps for the Oxford group, and that's kind of where the beginning was. So anyway, I'm going to go through this and talk about the prayers with each one. And the first step is this is a simple program for complicated people. We all know that. But the first step is we just admit that we're powerless over people, places, and things, over addiction. We're powerless. We are absolutely left to our own devices. We can't do a whole lot. But anyway, we're powerless, and that our lives have become unmanageable. And so the prayer for this step is, and remember in the 12 steps, we don't make conscious contact with God really until step 2, step 3, but anyway, it is all spiritually inspired. So the prayer for this is, and I'm sorry my friend Bob's not on here, he loves to talk about powerlessness, and that's what step 1 is powerlessness. And the prayer for step 1 is that help me, and who that help me is, we're going to say that when people say help, they're usually reaching out to a power greater than themselves, even if they don't know what to call the power greater than themselves. But this prayer is, help me this day to understand the true meaning of powerlessness and remove from me the power of my addiction. Doesn't that sound like a prayer to y'all? That's in step 1. That is in step 1. Help me this day to understand the true meaning of powerlessness. Powerlessness can be, we can have a whole meeting on powerlessness. And until we feel that depths of powerlessness, we're not going to want any help in anything. So Step 1. Help me this day to understand the true meaning of powerlessness and remove from me the power of my addiction. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And if you'll remember, this is a we program. It's not I. Sometimes I tend to say I, but it's a we program. You know, like I said, by ourselves, we're nothing. We can't do this by ourselves. It takes, it takes a village. It takes the group. That's how we heal, is in with other people. And a group is two people. Two people. It doesn't have to be 200 or 20, two people. Okay, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And the prayer for this step is, God, help me come to. You know, come, it says come to, that means help me wake up. That's what step 2 is an awakening, is to wake up, to come to. We have a disease, you know, and so it's the prayer for this step to help me to come to wake up so I can be restored to sanity. And what sanity is, you know, it doesn't mean that we're insane in every area. It does not. They're some of the smartest people I have ever known in 12-step programs. I mean, really, there's been research done. Alcoholics are at the top of the list for intelligence. You know, we're smart beyond our own good, I think, or whatever. I'm including myself in that. So yeah, that. But anyway, the prayer for this step is help me to come to wake up so I can be restored to sanity. And sanity, like I said, doesn't mean that we're insane in every area. It means a sliver is missing. When you see, you know, a circle, a big circle, that's the whole of our existence, that big circle. And what our addiction does, it's a sliver in there. Now, it's going to affect the whole circle, but it's not that we're insane in every area of our life, but in that...
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Okay, turn her, okay, she's listening. She might need to hear about the 12 steps. I bet she does, Alexis. So, it's about, there's a sliver missing. There's something missing in the brain of any form of an addict. Do y'all agree with that? If you do, shake your head. Our brains are different. They are different. And this is why, you know, I tell people all the time is, you didn't ask for this disease. You did not. You're not guilty for having it. You're just responsible for treating it. And I'm including adult children of alcoholics in this. I'm including codependents in this because in any addiction you might have. Okay, so restored to sanity and to know that I am not alone. That's really what step 2 is. For the first time, just having a knowing there's a possibility that we're not going to be alone anymore. And it's, dear God, heal my spirit and restore me to a clear mind. Heal my spirit and restore me to a clear mind. Okay, in step 3, made a decision. You know, we saw what the problem is in step 1. That's all step 1 is, as big as it is. That is the problem. And you can stay in the problem till hell freezes over and nothing's going to change. So step 1's the problem. Step 2 is the solution. If we have that deep down powerlessness, then step 2 is there is a power. There is a power greater than we are. And you ought to be well by now. Step 1, step 2, you admit it, and then there's step 2. But no, it goes on because we've got to make a decision. Which way do we want to go? Do we want to stay sick or do we want to get well? So step 3 made a decision to turn our will in our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. And a prayer, you can find this on page 63 out of the big book. It is recommended that we take this step. Now, this was before they didn't call them sponsors. They just called, the guys were helping each other in those early days. The word sponsor came out later. It said, take this, it's important to take this step with a safe person, such as your wife. In today's time, we don't recommend that. We do not recommend doing this with your spouse, because if he or she is not in recovery themselves, they'll correct you, whatever. Anyway, we say, and it goes on to say, a spiritual leader. But anyway, take this with an understanding person. And today we call that person a sponsor. And, the third step prayer, I love it. And this is found on page 63 of the big book. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of myself. I am the problem. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that power over them, that victory over them, I've said this trillions of times, that victory over them may bear witness to those that I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. So that's our job, is to show this power to other people. That into those that we would help, to show that God's power can and will live and does live in all of us. Thy love and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. That's his third step prayer. That's a very familiar prayer. Y'all all familiar with step 3? This third step prayer. Okay. All right. So going on to 4 is in step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now, y'all know what step 4 is, and a lot of times people think it's going to be all of that bad stuff that I've done and all. It's about taking an inventory of the stock in trade. If you have a business, if you have a grocery store or whatever, you sell products, you have to inventory that business periodically to see what you have and what's selling and what's not selling. What's not selling, you don't carry that anymore. That's what, and you keep the good stuff. You keep that good stuff. You put that good stuff out on those outer aisles to attract people. That's kind of what a 4th step is. We do look at the good and the bad and the awful and whatever, but it scares people away. The 4th step scares a lot of people away because they think they have to look at the dark side of themselves. And it is important that we let at least one person in our life know everything about us, and that's usually a sponsor. And that being a sponsor is one of the most, like Bill W. called Ebby, the man that took the message to him. Bill W. called him, they didn't say sponsor, but he called him his beloved. And that's what a good sponsor is a beloved person that's willing to help you find the road of recovery like someone showed them. And so it's, you can go to the book on page, it says, we ask God, it's step 4 then, okay, I'm mixed up here. No, I'm good. All right, in step 4, we made a searching and fearless inventory, moral inventory of ourselves. And then, so page 68, This is written, word for word. We ask God to remove our fear and direct our attention to what what He would have us be. Now we ask God. That's a prayer. Y'all with me? That's a prayer. We ask God to remove from us our fear, or remove from us all our character defects. To reveal, well, I am just so mixed up here. I'm going to get it right in a minute. But anyway, there is a short prayer with each one of the character defects. Like there's one for fear, that's on 68. There's one for resentment. There's one for sex. There's one for each of the character defects. And I would recommend that y'all look them up. For fear, I think I've already said the one for fear. God to remove our fear and direct our thinking to what He would have us be. And that's on page 68. 67 is resentment. We ask God to help show them the same tolerance, pity, I can't read my own writing, the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. That's a prayer, because, those of us that have any form of addiction, we are sick people. We're not bad people needing to get good. We're sick people needing to get well. So as you start working with each other, and others, it's important to see them as the sick person they are. Now, they may be very capable in a lot of areas, but in that area of an addiction, that's what you help them with. And then saying, this is part of the prayer, thy will be done. Then on page 69, there's a prayer, a meditation about sex. It says in meditation. What is meditation? It is asking God and thanking God. Meditation is speaking, speaking out loud to God and then listening. Prayer and meditation. Prayer is asking, meditation is listening. In meditation, and this is where we get, set quietly in meditation, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them in the sex area. To sum up about sex, we pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each situation, for sanity, and for strength to do the right thing. There's a lot of people, and I've worked with a lot of people through the years. They come in and get clean and sober. They do their first, fourth, and fifth step, and they look at the harm that they've done in that sex area. And not all people have done, not all have done harm in the sex area. I'm not talking to you if you haven't, so don't take it up. And if they don't see that harm that they have done, they may not drink, and they may have another addiction called sex addiction. And this has to be treated separately. It can't be treated along with alcoholism. When I was at the Serenity House and treated just drug addicts and alcoholics, LT, and this is before Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous was even established. We didn't know much about sex addiction, and it was happening. And it was happening in the rooms of AA, in the rooms, because all people were allowed to talk about was their drinking. A lot of harm was done back in those days, a lot of harm. I don't know that there is, I hope there is today, but sex must be talked about with a sponsor. And so it says, to sum up, we pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each situation, for sanity and for strength to do the right thing. Okay, so that's on page 69. And y'all can look these up if you want to. So step 5 is we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. That's what we do in step 5. We get with a a sponsor, someone, like I said a while ago, to listen to our 4th step. And we hear the exact nature of our wrongs. And the exact nature, if you've got a really smart sponsor, what they're going to show you, what the exact nature is going to be, every problem that you have or have had in the past is going to be under those categories. It's going to be under resentment, under fear, under problems in the sex area. Are y'all with me? Do you agree or disagree? Every problem you're going to have in your fourth step is going to be traced back to either fear or resentment or problems in the sex area. Fear is, fear of not getting what we think we need or want, or fear of losing what we have. Fear is a thread that runs through every part of our life. Fear, fear, fear. So on page 75 is the prayer. We thank God from the bottom of our hearts that we're knowing better. See, that's that we know Him better. Let me read that again. On page 75, this is after step 5. In 75, we thank God. That's a prayer. We thank God from the bottom of our hearts that we know Him better. How you're going to know Him better is to do the first 5 steps. You're going to get to know Him. You're going to begin that relationship. You're not going to be through with the relationship, but you're beginning to know Him, and you're beginning to trust Him through the people that are working with you. God lives and works through people, folks. So what the 12 steps does, it will march you up face to face with the God of your understanding. There is zero failure to it. Do y'all believe that? The 12 steps will march you up face to face with the God of your understanding. You don't have to believe it first, but you do these steps in the order that they're given and pray the prayer in each one of them, and you will get there by step 12. Okay, so we thank God, that's on page 75, from the bottom of our hearts that we are knowing Him better. And so step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove our shortcomings. We call those little bang bang steps 6 and 7. They work together. And all God's asking us to do in step 6 is just be entirely ready. Be ready to have God remove our shortcomings. Now, and what we're short of is love, tolerance, patience. We're long on fear, resentment, problems in the sex area. So on page 75, with the step 6, is a prayer. If we still cling to something we will not let go of, we ask God to help us to be willing. Doesn't that sound like a prayer to y'all? If we're not ready to give it up, this is on page 75 in step 6. We're just getting ready to get ready. You don't have to give up anything yet. You're getting ready to get ready. If we still cling to something we will not let go of, we ask God to help us to be willing. Willingness is the key. So that brings us to step 7. And step 7 is humbly. Humbly. What is humbly? What is being humble? Do y'all know, Jeff, what's being humble to you?
I was afraid you were going to ask me. To me, that's always not thinking about self, but thinking about others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And It's anyone else have an idea? TJ, what's humble mean to you?
I think humble means having the proper view of yourself, not better than or worse than others.
Yeah. Joseph, you have any idea? Anyone?
I think it's kind of having or at least seeking an understanding of who you really are and kind of what God would have you be.
Yeah. I'll give you a little story about humility, and I've told it before, but Joe McQuaney, who's had a treatment center up in Little Rock, Arkansas, called the Serenity House, he's the one who trained me in the alcoholism field. And he, once we had his program of Recovery Dynamics, that he'd come down once a month and train the staff, and then I would call him every single morning, 5 days a week at 6 o'clock, and get my marching orders from Joe. But anyway, it was one of those months that day that he was, one of those days that he was coming to Abilene. By this time, he had built up quite a reputation. And we would invite the AA community, we'd invite people outside. Even we had a news person there that wanted to interview Joe. The room where we had it was packed to the rim. And I had asked a board member if he'd go out to the airport and pick Joe up. And he said, sure, he would. And so we were all in there, and the board member had come back into the room, or come into the room. And I assumed that Joe might have been using the bathroom or something, because he didn't come in with him. And we kept waiting, and we kept waiting, and we kept waiting. And finally I got up and went out to look for him. And he always wore a little hat. And he was sitting out there in the living room holding that little hat. I said, Joe, what in the world are you doing out here? And he said, well, that board member went in that room over there, and he said, I looked in there and it looked like it was full of people, that y'all were having some kind of a meeting, and that I didn't want to interrupt y'all. That is what humility is, folks. That whole meeting was about him, and he didn't know it. That's what humility is. And he said, well, he just thought he was a person. He was a man of God. He was probably the most godly man I've ever known. I'd put him at the top of the list. But anyway, he just sitting out there. He said, well, I just thought that y'all were having some kind of important meeting. I said, yep, and you're it. So come on, let's get in here. All right, so page 75, I read that. That is, and then, 7, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And the 7th step prayer, 3rd step prayer, 7th step prayer, 11th step prayer are the big prayers. Y'all know what the big prayers are. After you do step 3, it's recommended in the book that we take the step with a safe person. Today we'd say a sponsor, and most, when I sponsor people, of course they're out of town now, anyway, I would ask them to get on their knees if they were comfortable getting on their knees, and we would take step 3 together. And we would take step 3 together, and then, I'd give them an assignment to do step 4, and then we'd do step 5. And in step 5, like we say, these 6 and 7 are little bang steps, and step 7 is going to give you instructions to do right after you do the 5th step. And what it says is to, and now some sponsors, and I have taken this 7th step with people I sponsor. And it says in the book to go home after you do your 5th step. Take the book down off of the shelf, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and read this passage in there, and read this prayer. And what this prayer says, I prefer doing it with the people that I sponsor, but you can do it anyway. But it says to get alone and to this prayer. It says, "My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me," because you have shoveled out a lot of stuff through that fourth and fifth step to that sponsor. So it's talking about all of that stuff that you didn't want to tell anybody that you wanted to take to your grave. And now you're saying, "My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding." And so your bidding, what is bidding? Jeff, what's bidding? Not Vegas kind.
Work.
Yeah.
To do your work.
Yeah. I'm picking on you because, so just set a boundary, all right? I'm picking on you, Jeff, because I believe that if we went to the dictionary and looked up sponsor, your picture would be by there. You take sponsorship so serious. You do it by the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Am I saying this right?
Well, it works.
It does. So, and I'm sure the rest of you, I just know Jeff and I know what he does. I know what he's done for so many of our male clients. And how do you stay sober, Jeff?
Going to meetings, calling my sponsor, talking about what's going on with me.
Yeah, so you still, we do it all, and we must give it away or we can't keep it, And so I just wanted to commend you for, and I know you do it because you want to stay sober, but I'll tell you, you give a lot and you're a very excellent sponsor. So, all righty, with that, to go out and do your bidding, and what bidding is to tell about your experience, strength, and hope. It's not about, when I first got into Al-Anon, it was like I had a banner and I went out and I wanted to recruit everybody that I thought that might need an Al-Anon program, and that was a lot of them. I turned a lot of people off. I probably turned people off that would have really benefited. I've looked at that. This has been years ago. I don't know if they ever made it to Al-Anon. But I would just browbeat people, that if they were living in the disease of alcoholism. I couldn't understand, and it still behooves me even today when people who live in the disease of alcoholism who don't want help for themselves. They just want help for the alcoholic. I don't do what I used to do, but I do pray for them because the family gets as sick, if not sicker, than the alcoholic. Because, what I was using all the time, he was drinking, I was getting drunk on food. Ate myself up to 287 pounds. And so we were two addicts living together and married, not just living together. And so we were both sick and we both needed help. And so mine, started in Al-Anon in October of 1968. And I didn't know how sick I was till I got to Al-Anon. And anyway, I'm very grateful, and it took me 6 months to say my name. I couldn't get a word out. All I'd do is cry. And then once I got to getting better, I wanted to tell the whole world. I went out and did my bidding. I didn't do God's bidding. I did my bidding. I wanted them to get the message. Okay, so step 8, made a list of all persons I had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So, and page 76 is the prayer. There's got to have, in order to do step 8, step 8 is really one of the easiest steps to do, but anyway, it's we have to get willing. We have to make a list and get willing. Willing is the word, willing to make amends to all the people that we had harmed. It's a simple step, but a lot of times it's hard for people to do. And because they don't, some folks get stuck on, well, they did more harm to me than I did them. Why do I have to have their name on my list? Look what they did to me. Blah, blah, blah. It does not matter. If you want to get well, you got to see your part in every situation, even if it was just a tenth of the problem and the other person had the rest of it. You're the one that's doing the steps. You're the one that's trying to get well. And so making that list, that list that you made in step 4 that had all your resentments on it, I just hated this. The first step I did, she tricked me, my sponsor. And that was before we had a lot of printed literature or any of that. She was an alcoholic. It took me a long time to really warm up to Al-Anon's, although I went to Al-Anon all the time. But I felt so guilty. I didn't feel like I belonged in Al-Anon anyway, because I was an addict myself, is what I've come to realize. So, she took me, I did a 4-step right out of the big book, and she had me to list everybody that I resented. And, I had me to go back all the way back to my childhood and list, it didn't, that was an easy list to make, because I thought everybody to come in contact with me, that I'd come in contact with, had harmed me. Bless my heart. I went back to the first and said, long story short, there was about 85 people on my first resentment list. Resentment. And then I had on the fears, I didn't have as many fears because I had lived, when you have lived through hell growing up, I had survived a lot. I had survived gunshots. I'd survived a lot. So I didn't have a lot of fear. I've had more fear in recovery than I had before. But anyway, so the resentment list is what I'm talking about. And then that list on the sex list, because there'll be people on your sex list that doesn't show up on your resentment list, and a smart sponsor will have you to look at that sex list to see what did you do, and a lot of women that are like churchgoers and all, they just are appalled that they even have to write out the word sex, let alone look at it, But part of the problem in the sex area is, if you're married, it is withholding sex from your husband. It is, or wife. It is about flirting with other people to make your spouse jealous. Those are the areas that come out in that sex area. You can be pure as the driven snow and still have things on that sex list that you need to look at. And a good sponsor will help you see that. So you make the list, and all step 8 is making a list. And what you do, you take those resentments, fear, and sex, and you make 3 columns, is what I was taught to do. On one column, you list out everybody that you're willing to make amends to. If they were to walk in the front door, if you were to see them today, you're willing to make amends to them. That second column is in the future. I'm not ready now, but I will in the future. I'm willing to make amends. And then that third column is, oh my God, I don't ever want to see them again. No, I do not want to make amends to that person. You're either way embarrassed by what you did or whatever. And, my sponsor, she was she was soft, but she was hard. And that heifer made me start in that third column. She said, I want you to pick out one name off of that third column and start with that. And that was wise, and that's what I do when I sponsor people. So the prayer then is, because that's what we're talking about. I love the steps. You can tell, and I get off on talking about the steps. So the prayer is page 76 of step 8. If we haven't the will to do this, if we haven't the will to make a list, then we ask until it comes. That's all we do. We ask until it comes. Step 9 is may direct amends to such people wherever. It doesn't say whenever, it says wherever possible, except when to do so would harm them or others would. So the thing about this wherever, we ask in step 9, may direct amends to such people wherever possible. What does that mean to y'all? Where it says wherever instead of whenever. And I've gone into rooms throughout, I go to meetings, have gone to meetings all over the world. And I've gone into rooms and where they'll have somebody's painted the steps on the wall. And I don't see this a lot, but I've seen where they would change whenever to wherever. Y'all know the difference? Sure you do. Okay, I'll tell you. Whenever is you want to just jump right into it, just jump right in and and make amends, and a good sponsor will not let you do that. Wherever is when invariably, see, this is God's work. Now you make that list, you get willing to make the amends, and then what's going to happen is God's going to put that person on your heart, and you'll be amazed at where that person is going to show up. And it doesn't mean that you just wait till they show up. You do have to have means to, and whatever your sponsor tells you to do, write letters, do telephone calls, see them in person, whatever. But it's the wherever, it's in the timing. It is in the timing. I'll tell you this real short little thing. On my first 4th and 5th step in my first amends list, I didn't run around with kids because I took care of my mother, but I did one time, was in the car with some teenagers. I was about 15. That was my teenage years, age 15. I'd lost a lot of weight and I was kind of cute and all that. But anyway, there was this girl that was in there that was a cheerleader, and she was cute, precious, and darling and hyper, and everybody loved her. And I was so jealous of her. I just hated her guts. I hated her, and I wanted to be just like her. And so what I would do is I'd gossip about her. I'd make up stuff about her and gossip about her. And then, I moved off and never did see her again, ever in my life. And so my husband and I, we took a turn, about a 6 months term at the Open Door. And what we would do is our job was to host once a month. We'd have an out-of-town speaker, and it was our job to host that out-of-town speaker. Pick them up, take them to a meal, whatever, keep them in our home sometimes, whatever we did. Anyway, we went that evening to the hotel to pick up, we had a woman speaker. We went to the hotel to pick up this woman, and she'd been in AA for years. And when we went to pick her up, I'd never seen her. I'd heard her name. Guess who it was? It was the girl that I had talked about when I was 15 years old and had done harm to, and I saw her. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she said, "Tennie, I've got something to say to you." And I said, "No, I have something to say to you." She said, I've got to make my amends. You've been on my list too long." She said, "I gossiped about you. I put you down." I said, "Well, I did you too." So that's wherever. You just be open, and those people are gonna show up. Some of you do have to, but anyway, you follow your sponsor's direction on that. So the prayer for that is, let's see, the prayer in step 9 is on page 79. We ask that, this is in step 9, we ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences are. And that's where back again, we ask that we be given the strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences are. And this is where good sponsorship will come in. You know, and I'm not going to go into all of that, but there's times that, you know, that step says to make amends except when it will do harm to you, to others. And so a good sponsor will guide you in that. They will guide you. Don't run out that whenever, you know, and try to just, you know, make the slate clean and go try to make amends to everybody. Don't do that. Do not do that. You work diligently with the sponsor one at a time, unless someone pops up in your life like Gloria did. Her name was Gloria. All right, step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So on page 84, there is a prayer. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And when this crops up, we ask God to remove it. And that is a prayer. We ask God that we stop in the midst. That's, you know, it says the 12 and 12, we do a spot check inventory. I love that in the 12 and 12, where we stop in the midst of a problem or whatever's happening, and we do a spot check inventory and see where am I, what part am I playing in this? And we, you know, if you can do a spot check inventory and check your behavior, then you're not going to have an amends to make, you know. But if you've already made it, you know, the mistake, then you make the amends it says just as soon as you can, promptly admit it. So that prayer is found on page 84. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When this crops up, we ask God to remove them. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood God. Praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So on page 84, 85, before we began our day, we asked God to direct our thinking, asking that it be divorce, and that's on page 86, divorce from self-pity, dishonest or self-seeking motives, and we thank Him at night. That's what the 11th step prayer is. Now, in the 12 and 12, there is a step 12 prayer, and I can't remember if it's in the big book. Maybe Jeff knows. But anyway, it is in the 12 and 12. It is St. Francis prayer. That is considered the 11th step prayer. But here on page 86, there is that prayer before we begin our day. I mean, when you first get up, my sponsor said, you know, make conscious contact with God before you make conscious contact with people, and you're less likely to mess up the day. You know, invite God in before you do anything else. So before we begin our day, we ask God to direct our thinking, that it will be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives, and then we thank Him at night. And then step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And some people have spiritual experiences, but they'll also have more of awakening the more they work the steps. So we just keep coming to, waking up. And so having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics, addicts, and to practice these principles in our affairs. And so page 164 is a 12-step prayer. It says, ask him in your morning meditation, what can you do each day for the person who is still sick? The answer will come to you if your own house is in order. Doesn't that sound like a prayer to you? It's not distinguished as a prayer, but it is a prayer. This is where studying and really looking at the steps helps, and I'm sure all of y'all probably know this. But I want to repeat that. Of a morning, we ask God in our morning meditation, what can I do each day for the person who is still sick? The answer will come if your own house is in order. I know I kind of skipped around, and I always blame it on my being 81, and my memory's not quite as good. So I have an excuse. What's y'all's excuse for forgetting? All right, do you have any questions? Let's talk about it. I mean, I'm sure y'all have heard this before. Is it anything new to you?